Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cut to the Chase Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chase Johns. Right next to me, Brady King. What's going on, Brady?
Not much. I was expecting to have Matt Ricketts here tonight.
Yeah.
He bailed, so he's not with us. But I'm still ready to do this preview without him. We were going to do Big Ten, move that away to a different day. We're still going to do that, obviously. But we're still here, and it's going to be a good episode.
Most definitely. If you guys are watching or listening to us, make sure you like, subscribe to us on YouTube, and give us the 5-star rating on any platform that you can find your podcast. We appreciate the support. It's that time of year where we get into previews, we get into predictions and everything else. We're about a month away from college football. It's pretty crazy to think about right now, isn't it?
It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, feels like we just ended the season. I remember that terrible day when the Wolverines played in the last game and won. That was a bad day, and I was very much looking forward to the next year, so that can be not the case anymore to where they're no longer champions. We're almost there.
Yeah,
we're almost there.
Football's nearly back. All right. And obviously, NFL stuff's been going on, but college practices are going to start soon. And I believe, we'll talk about Ohio State in another episode, but isn't Ohio State going to have some open to public practices this coming up August?
Yeah, fall camp. It's going to be $50. You can get into practice. It will sell out every single time, so people are going to have to get those tickets early. But I think that's pretty cool. It's going to be kind of a nice little environment. You can go watch the team early. You don't have to just look at what the insiders have to say, because that's usually what you have to do at fall camp. No, there's never been open practices before like this, so it's going to be really interesting to see how that changes off-season reporting.
Well, you got the Big Ten. We'll preview that a few days from now. But these two conferences that we're talking about, pretty much the big two, and the SEC is the first conference that we're going to talk about in this preview mode of college football.
Yes,
man. Texas and Oklahoma come over. We talked about them in the last episode a little bit, but I mean, this SEC conference, again, it's a very tough unit of teams, front loaded by Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and then the two teams that came over, and also Missouri had a pretty good season last year. What's your thoughts on the 2024 SEC look? Just basic at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, adding in two blue blood programs is going to really change the whole outlook of the conference. I mean, Georgia and Alabama have obviously been the two teams to dominate this conference of, recent history. But with, especially Texas coming in, that's another team that could reign at the top of this conference if they hit their stride. So I think they have a lot of good teams this year. And like you said, Ole Miss should be good. Now, they did lose some very key players, but they also had a lot of portal additions as well. And then, like you said, Missouri, they're returning a good amount of their pieces from a pretty good team last year that won at like 10 games. So, and obviously beat Ohio State with a bit of an asterisk on it. I mean, we win that game in the regular season, but still, I mean, they're a good team, and it's going to be interesting to see how, the two teams that are coming in shake it up, because that's the headline this year.
And the thing is, with the schedule, we're looking at, Texas is going to play a lot of very, they're both going to play obviously different opponents, but there's going to be some very high profile matchups that you wouldn't normally see on Saturdays. Like, just throwing out, for example, like Texas is going to play Florida. I know Florida's not good right now, but back in the day, and in the mid 2000s, you're looking at, Texas won a championship at 2005 and Florida won it at 2006, and you're looking at those two teams, and you're like, that's a big time game.
Yeah.
Oklahoma's playing Ole Miss. Oklahoma's playing Bama. Texas playing Georgia, which we'll mention here in a minute. But I want to get your top 3 games that are in conference, because let's mention this. All right, the SEC, they're out of conference schedules. There are some really good games on the slate.
Yeah,
Texas is going to play Michigan.
Yep.
Alabama's going to go to Camp Randall and play Wisconsin,
which is nuts for Bama to do.
It's unbelievable. They normally don't. Yeah, they normally do not do that at all. And then, Georgia's playing Clemson. There are some great games that are going to start off the 2024 college football season that feature SEC teams, but are not SEC matchups.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at SEC matchups, we're getting mid-September all the way through.
Yep.
What's a game that really sticks out to you and you're going to be in front of the television watching?
I think the top game in this conference this year is Georgia versus Alabama. I know it's not the new teams coming in or anything, but they avoid each other in the regular season. It's a little strange how much they avoid each other in the regular season, and the fact that they're, even though Nick Saban's gone, I think Bama is a top 5 team entering the year, and Georgia is a top 2 team entering the year. So when you look at it like that, and not saying that, and again, I also think Texas is top 5, but in terms of the past history with these two teams, and their fan bases hate each other. They do, because they've been battling it out in the SEC championship, even the national championship, in the past, decade or so, multiple times. So I think just the atmosphere of this game is going to be really good, and I'm very excited. I'm more excited for this game than any other game in the conference. And also, you've got there's like a Carson Beck, Jalen Milroe rivalry kind of built up amongst the two fan bases last year, especially since Bama won, and it gave Bama more of that talking point. And it's a revenge game for Georgia.
Yeah, and again, Brady mentioned that both these teams don't play each other in the regular season much at all. You see a lot in the postseason. The last couple of years, you saw national championship, SEC championship matchups, and everything else. But the last time these two teams played each other in the regular season was 2020 during COVID. So it seems like it's an election year kind of thing with it coming up in 2024. Two teams playing each other over at Bryant-Denny Stadium, and that was also where they played last. When was I don't even know the last time Alabama played at Georgia.
I think it was 2015 with Derrick Henry, and Georgia was not good. So it was like almost didn't feel the same.
Yeah.
It was like a 40-point win for Bama.
The magnitude.
The week after they lost to Ole Miss, they played Georgia.
And I remember the Ole Miss game was really early in the season.
It was early
with Chad Kelly of all people winning the game. It's unbelievable.
So this is their 3rd time playing Georgia in the regular season since 2015.
I mean, and to give reference, I was in 7th grade. Brady was in 5th grade.
Exactly.
Unbelievable. Now, another game on the slate, which I know that you're going to mention regarding Georgia, they go on the road a couple weeks after October 19th to take on
Texas. I mean, that's a huge game. I mean, it's the other one that was in. I think these are the top 2 games. Both having to involve Georgia. The reason I didn't pick this as number 1 is because, again, there's really no history between these two other than Bevo trying to kill the Bulldog. Like
the Sugar Bowl, I think. That was Sugar Bowl a few years back,
when Texas beat Georgia. That was a fun game because I was upset because, not that it mattered that much, but Georgia was ranked 5th and they put us at 6th. Like for the final playoff ranking, saying that 2-loss Georgia was closer to get. It was just like an annoying point they made just because they almost beat Bama. And I was just happy to see them lose after that to Texas of all teams. But that was a good game. And now they're finally getting their rematch, Georgia versus Texas. Still 2 big programs. And being at Texas, I think that makes this a great game because Texas probably going to be your preseason number 4 team. Georgia probably going to be preseason number 1 if I had to guess. So it's going to be a very highly ranked matchup, and it's the 2 best quarterbacks in the conference, what most people would say. And also,
some people might even say the country at this point.
They might.
There's some people that would say that.
I mean, I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's a crazy take.
It's wild.
I mean, I think I might say that. And I also do think it's a bit weak of the quarter. It's a very strong year for other positions. Quarterback, not the strongest, but these 2 are still good players.
Normally, you see some guys that'll make their strides by that time in October, and maybe someone enters the conversation.
Someone will probably pop up, some random, like I don't know who necessarily it could be, but there's going to be a random
again, and that's why we're doing these previews. So now we're just pulling back the books and seeing, hey, maybe this guy will break out and stuff. We'll do breakout players later on in the show, but to mention Texas and Georgia, that game's either going to be at 3:30 or 4:30, or it could be in the nightcap at 6 to 8 p.m. It's weird how they're doing it with the SEC. They're doing this like flexing schedule thing once they get there. The one game that is scheduled for certain, the night game, is UGA versus Bama. That's already set for 7:30 on ABC with Fowler and Herbstreit. That's the one game, and that pretty much shows that it's the biggest game on the slate before the season has even started.
I think that game and another game will I might as well say Oregon, Ohio State are the 2 biggest games this year.
Yeah, and I mean they're 2 weeks apart. It's gonna be fantastic. You think about those right there, and then right in between. I know these teams aren't going to be that great, but you have a national championship rematch between Michigan and Washington over in Seattle.
That's true.
So, and then you follow it up by Georgia and Texas. There's about a month of football where it's just like this is going to be some. There's a lot of juicy storylines in between, which is going to be fun.
Oh yeah.
The third game in this one. Okay, now it's I had a different. Mine on this. I'll give you the game after you give it.
Yeah.
Who are you thinking is the 3rd best game?
I was going back and forth because it's tough. I was thinking about multiple different scenarios. I went with the Red River Showdown between Oklahoma and Texas, and it's a basic pick.
Fair enough.
But just because it's the biggest rivalry in the conference, in my opinion, right now, I don't think Auburn, Alabama, when one of the team isn't as good, is as good of a rivalry. Now, when they're both great, it's a great rivalry, and it's probably the second best in the country. But I think history-wise and right now, I think I had to choose one of my 3 games as the conference's best. The new members of the conference are the conference's best rivalry, and I think Oklahoma should be good this year. I don't think they're going to be as good as Texas, but they weren't as good as Texas last year. They beat Texas. So I'm pretty excited to watch that game. And I think it's going to be a really good game. And I think that's my third, but I know I'll give you the.
And it's going to be, you think about the first edition of the Red River rivalry is they changed it so many times with the names of like the shootout rivalry, all that stuff. It's the first edition between these 2 teams in the SEC. It's going to bring a different magnitude. It's still going to be on the same networks and channels that it was the last couple of years and everything, but it's still going to be the same game. It's going to be 2 teams that hate each other, that have historic prowess against each other. Now, stay with Oklahoma, all right, as one of these teams in this matchup versus Missouri. That's not, I wouldn't say necessarily the best game, but it's a sneaky one because these 2 teams,
they're evenly leveled.
Yeah, they're evenly leveled teams, and they have that Big 12 rivalry back in the day. I wouldn't say rivals, but they
played a lot.
Yeah, they played a lot back in the day. And, just seeing Oklahoma go on the road against Mizzou. Mizzou is projected to be a pretty good team this year.
10.
And again, that could be that's also a potential game where it's, a flex game to the night slot. This could be Fowler and Herbstreit going out to Missouri, which is a place that, they don't really see a whole lot of night games. They don't get a whole lot of national attention. And with a guy like Luther Burden out there at receiver, it could be a pretty electric atmosphere entering Oklahoma and Brent Venables in there. And I'm excited to see that matchup. That's November the 9th. That's going to be later on in the season. With the SEC moving to, not divisions and stuff, it's an open field. This could really well, be one of those bricks that plays into the SEC championship. I know we have our couple teams that we're assuming we'll get into those conference championship predictions in a minute. But I do want to pass it back to you. Best player at each position. We were talking about this a little bit before. I think I know the offense at the moment. Defense, I'm going to be intrigued on, but let's start with the quarterback. Who's the best quarterback in the SEC going into this season?
I think there's 5 quarterbacks in this conference that are pretty solidified players. And I'm going to throw a curveball, actually, on this. I thought I was going to go with the obvious pick, but I have an opinion that I think there's going to be a player that becomes the best quarterback in this conference.
Scoot a little more in the frame so we can cut this up.
Yeah, so I think Nico Iamaleava is the best quarterback in the SEC, and I think he might win the Heisman. I think he's might be the best quarterback in college football, but he'll have to stay another year because he's only a true sophomore. 6'6". I watched him against Iowa, and this guy is making every throw on the field that he needs to. He's not necessarily trying to throw a deep ball every play. That's how you lose against Iowa. He just took, he has a strong arm, 6'6", fast. He can probably run like a 4.6, and I think he'll throw for close to 4,000 yards, maybe 40+ touchdowns this year. I don't think Tennessee's going to be great. That's the issue with with my Heisman pick there. But I think his stats might just be the best in the country, and I think he's the best quarterback in the SEC. Now, the obvious pick would have been Carson Beck or Quinn Ewers. I think Carson Beck right now, from what we've seen right now, is the best quarterback in the SEC. But best quarterback in the SEC this year, I think, is going to be Nico.
And Nico, I had to look this guy up for a second. He was born in 2004.
Yeah,
we've entered that frame of football where guys are born in the 2000s, and now guys are. I'm technically older than people now, which is unbelievable to think. 6'6", 195 pounds.
He is skinny. That is an issue.
It's not normal.
I think he probably would have started last year if he had a little bit more weight on him. I think he was. I think he was the best quarterback in that 2023 recruiting class over, I don't think Arch Manning's bad. I think he's better than Arch Manning, better than Dante Moore that transferred over to Oregon. And I was surprised they didn't bench Joe Milton earlier, but then Joe didn't opted out, I guess, of the bowl game. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, he wasn't good enough to do that. He's nowhere near the level of player that I think Nico will be. And he came in there, managed the offense perfectly. I think he had I can't quite remember. He might have had a couple rushing touchdowns that game, and that's not even his thing. He's a pocket passer. He can just move when he needs to. And in that offense, little gimmicky offense, I would take him to be Ohio State's quarterback right now without seeing him take a snap over Will Howard.
All right.
I would.
Let's move to the running back position. Who's the best running back going to be? Quinshawn Judkins left Ole Miss at Ohio State. Thank the Lord for that.
Yep.
Who's the best running back in this conference in the SEC?
So this one, there's not like, in my opinion, there isn't one running back in this conference that I look at and I'm like, this is the clear guy. There really isn't anyone proven in that conference that's like ultra elite, in my opinion, at this moment. Now, I'm going to go with Cedric Baxter from Texas because he played a lot as a freshman last year. I liked what I saw every time he was on the field. And again, I know I went with a potential pick on my last pick just because I'm pretty strong. I feel pretty strongly about that. This is more of like I've already seen him do it throughout a season, and I just feel like he'll naturally take that sophomore leap. And he was a 5-star, and Cedric Baxter is my pick. An honorable mention would be Justice Haynes at Alabama. He's another highly ranked recruit from the 2023 class that's going to become the starter. I mean, Alabama's two running backs from last year both transferred because of him and Jam Miller. So you'd have to think those guys are the best candidates for that.
Now, these next couple positions, let's say receiver real quick. I think we know who the easy choice would be in this selection.
Yeah, number one. I mean, this is preseason. I think you have to call him the best receiver in the country after last year, Luther Burden the third. I mean, because the amount of things he can do. He's not like a freak athlete, but he's fast. He catches a lot of screens when they just need a quick 3rd and 10. You got to be weary of that screen for him. He's a deep threat after the catch, good route. I mean, he's just a really good receiver on all aspects of the game. And he was a shocker when he committed to Missouri because he decommitted from Oklahoma when Lincoln left. And it was between Georgia and Missouri, and he picked Missouri, his home state, and now he's probably the preseason best receiver in the country.
Well, that gives that Oklahoma-Missouri game maybe a little more fire for Luther Burden at that point.
It does.
Let's go to tight end. We talked about tight end. You know, Texas had a couple guys last year. Georgia's been a powerhouse with the tight end position. Do we stick with Georgia tight ends in this one? Who's it going to be?
I think we do. Now, again, I guess the SEC had lost a lot of guys, so I know I'm picking another guy that wasn't a starter last year as the top player at this position, but I think it's a safe bet because I'm going to pick the number 1 tight end of the 2022 class. Rotated in. He played very well. He did start games because he played very well when he came in for Brock Bowers when he was injured. It's Oscar Delp, I think. I mean, I could go with – there's other guys I could go with in this conference, but – I think Delp is the guy I would go with here. So I've already picked 3 that haven't necessarily been a full-time starter, but I think we could look back and at least one of them is going to be right.
And this next one on the offensive line, we're not going to break down specific positions on the O-line. Obviously, it's a whole unit effort, but this guy is runaway.
It's easy. I mean, this is a true freshman day 1 starter, high recruit out of high school. 5-star, but like the 4th ranked offensive tackle. So this was a little bit unexpected from the jump. Has been LSU's best offensive lineman the past 2 years, and I saw a video of him the other day squatting like 700 pounds. Will Campbell, he's projected to go in the top 3. He'll get taken very early. I mean, I'm sure they'll call him generational, and I think doesn't have many flaws. And I mean, it's the obvious pick. There's nobody there's other good offensive linemen, obviously, in the conference, like Tyler Booker from Bama is a really good player. And then there's Missouri had a good offensive line last year. There's not necessarily like one player on that O line that was just way better than the rest that's still on the team because they had guys go to the NFL. And Texas on their O line, they have I forget his name, something Campbell. He was in the 2022 class. I just drew a blank. But Will Campbell, another Campbell. I didn't even think of that. But yeah, Will Campbell, maybe the best player in the country going into the season.
Good. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, a lot of people are, like you said, top 3 in the draft, maybe. And some, depending on who the team is that gets number 1 overall pick, might take him as the first selection.
It's a weak quarterback class compared to usual. So it wouldn't be a big issue to pass on Carson Beck or Quinn Ewers or
they put guys like Shooter Sanders up there too. Yeah. And that's going to be fun to do a Big 12 preview on that because we'll break down Colorado quite a bit on that. Yeah. You know, it's going to be
we'll definitely break them down.
It's going to be a heart-to-heart discussion with us and everybody else out there. But we'll go to defense now. You know, I know there's differences in the interior defensive line and edge rushers, and some people are playing 3-4, some people play 4-3s. But you know, who's the best at getting after the quarterback?
This one, I know he had a little bit of a sophomore slump. He still had a good year, but it was a slump compared to his freshman year where he was getting called a generational talent. Harold Perkins from LSU. He's like an edge rusher, linebacker / defensive end, classic, just off the edge, Micah Parsons type of guy. I have a feeling he's going to get back to – he's not like generational, but – he's definitely the best edge in the conference going into the season in my eyes. And I think you could see, double-digit sacks as well as quite a few tackles in space because he's going to play like a little bit of the linebacker role as well, but he's the best pass rusher in the SEC. So LSU has a couple in there, even though I don't know they're going to be a great team, but they have a couple of really good high-level players.
Now let's go pure linebacker. Okay,
we'll do that.
Yeah. Who is the best pure linebacker? Just a guy that, you know, just knows how to hunt after the football.
I'm between three guys, and I'll give you my pick. First, these three guys play on one of them is on each of the three best teams in the conference. Alabama has Deontay Lawson. He came back for his senior year, just a classic, you know, middle linebacker that's going to have over 100 tackles, most likely. That's a prediction because he didn't last year, but he's going to have a bigger role this year. Then you go over to Georgia with Smile Munden. He also came back for his senior season. Both of those guys were 5 stars. And then you go to Texas to Anthony Hill, who was a freshman last year and started for them. My favorite out of the three is Smile Munden from Georgia. I think I'm going to go with him. I was surprised he wasn't higher rated to the draft. Wasn't a higher draft, profile.
Draft grade and profile
last year from what I've seen. And he's my favorite, but Anthony Hill is probably the biggest freak out of the three from Texas. So I'll go with Smile Munden, but don't be surprised if it's Anthony Hill either.
Hey, Smile, be happy about you know being the top of the list, the Brady's list here. And well, you know, yes, it's Smile in that regard. And
Smael, the spelling.
Really?
Yeah, Smael is pronounced Smile.
Well,
yeah,
interesting.
And they also have Xavier Sori. Those
are some very interesting names, you know? I mean,
both were 5-star. They had 2 5-star linebackers in 2021 class. Neither left after 3.
Wow.
Sorry, I don't even think is that good. He plays somebody's not that
good. Well, we'll see them next year in the draft, hopefully, in that regard. Hopefully, you know? But let's go to the defensive backs. Let's start at corner. Who's the standalone corner in this? Is it easy to pick a guy that's over the top from everybody else, or is it?
It's not easy. I also went back and forth between a large variety of people on this list. And it's one where since there's not like a select answer, I'm going to go ahead and pick another guy that he's actually been disappointing so far, but I think there's a reason for that. Damani Jackson going to Alabama from USC. He had some really bad moments at USC, but he was in the right spots. Like it was like more, I think it was coaching, because a lot of time you see a corner get better when they go to better coaching and learning how to play the ball, doing better drills, because he's the most physically gifted corner maybe in the country. I don't think he's the best corner in the country because he just hasn't proven that yet. But since there's not a standout guy, because all the best corners in the country, this is a great year for corners. I mean, there's Will Johnson, Jabbar Muhammad, Denzel Burke, Benjamin Morrison, all the guys I listed. 3 are in the Big Ten, 1's on independent. Those are great players. The SEC doesn't have a proven guy, so I'm going to go with Damani. I think he's going to be so much better at Bama.
So we talked about Ohio State poached a guy like Quinshon Judkins, the best running back last year. We also took a guy who was the best safety in the SEC and in the entire country.
We did.
Caleb Downs.
We did, thankfully. We took 2 spots on the list.
We did. We definitely did. And we're very glad about that as Ohio State fans. But big shoes to fill for a guy like Caleb Downs. It's going to be hard to replace the best safety in the SEC. But who is it right now?
So they just happened to the guy that's not too far behind Caleb Downs is also in that conference. They're the only two that you could even – I still think it's pretty clear that Caleb is the best, but Georgia fans would tell you otherwise. And although when Caleb was going to go to Georgia, they would have told you Caleb is barely better than their other safety, who's going to be probably a top 15 pick, maybe top 10 in this next draft, Malachi Starks. He has been starting since his freshman year. I don't know if you remember when they played Oregon 49-3 in 2022. He made like a leaping pick his first game.
I do remember that.
That was him. Yeah, as true freshman. He was a top 5 recruit. He was like the 2022 version of Caleb Downs. Not quite to the level. He wasn't the best player on Georgia's defense that year, but Malachi is far and away the second best scorer in the country. So Georgia is going to take that spot. But I will say probably would have been Caleb Downs if he would have stayed at Bama going into his second year. But Malachi Starks is also a good option. So this is a no-brainer here.
All right, and we're going to move on to the conference championship predictions.
Yeah.
I'll give mine first. I think it'll be Georgia and Texas. I know it's kind of chalk at the moment. Saban even predicted that too and everything.
Yep.
I'm going to say Georgia wins. I think they get their rebound and everything else, and I think they're going to be in a good spot for the playoff this upcoming winter. I'm going to say Georgia wins the conference. What do you got?
I've gone back. I mean, I have Georgia in there. I'm going back and forth between Alabama and Texas. Oh, man.
I remember last year we did a preview and you were talking about, I believe you just had that feeling that Bama was going to win it.
I did.
And it happened. They beat Georgia.
I have the same feeling again this year, but I'm going to go Texas. I have the feeling, but my mind is telling me to sway away because I don't know. I know Kalen DeBoer is a great coach also. I don't think they're going to miss a big beat. I think Bama is going to be top 5, like I said.
Yeah.
But I think Texas is gonna be in that game and not Bama.
Now, who wins that game? I know we're talking so far in advance.
Yeah, Georgia.
Georgia wins.
Okay.
You gotta give a score.
I think
you don't have to.
I'm not going to give a score, but I think Texas beats Georgia in the regular season, though.
All right.
But I think Texas is going to go. I think they're going to lose to Michigan. It's a weird take. I think they're going to lose to Michigan on the road
early.
Yeah. But I think they're going to beat Georgia, and I think they're going to go like 11-1.
That's
go to the conference championship.
That's what makes this conference more interesting now, since there are no divisions. You're looking at, Georgia plays 2 road games against Bama and Texas. They lose both of those games by mid-October. They could be out of it. Out of the race for the SEC championship.
That's my thing. Is I actually also thought about the Alabama-Texas matchup a little bit, but then I thought, I just think Georgia is going to be too well coached, and they've been there before. All these guys have been there. Well, not all of them, but most of these guys have been there before. That's what makes me that's why I ended up locking them in and made it between Alabama and Texas. Although I do think, as of now, I have Texas winning the game at Georgia. I could change my mind up until the game by seeing them. Because Texas could be a disappointment.
Yeah.
Now, this is not a little bit off topic. The reason I have them losing to Michigan isn't because I think they're a worse team. I think they are better, but I don't think the matchup is good at all for them. I think on the road at the Big House, and Texas can't run the ball well enough. Now, they have the best running back in the conference, but that's passing is involved in my statement there. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball well on Michigan, and part of me doesn't trust Quinn Ewers to win the game.
Will Johnson as well.
Will Johnson
and
tough. Their other secondary players are good. Makari Page, Rod Moore is probably not going to play that game. I'd be shocked if he's back by then.
Yeah,
but that's why I have them losing to them. Although I think Georgia and Texas are better.
Now we would both agree that Georgia and Texas make the playoff this year, with it being 12 teams now.
Yeah.
How many make it from the SEC?
Georgia, Texas, Bama.
Are you going to say? I know who you're going to say.
Ole Miss?
Yes.
Ole Miss is going to make it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to say it 4?
I'm going to say 4.
I was going to say it 4 as well. Yeah, I was going to say it 4, and I was going to say that exact 4. I think I don't know. It's interesting with Missouri though. I really they're going to be a good team, but I just don't know.
They lost the best running back in the conference. Other than Quinshon Judkins, they lost. Well, last year he was the SEC running back of the year. Cody Schrader was. They lost, and that's a huge piece. Although they have all their receivers back, their quarterback back. They also lost some defensive guys. I think Ole Miss is better. I think this is better.
Yeah, and we'll circle back here to end the show. You mentioned a lot of guys that haven't really gotten a chance, and you've put them as some of the best players. You think they're going to be the best players in the conference. So if you were to narrow down 3 of them to be the breakout players of this conference, who would you say? Just pick 3 of them because there are a lot of guys. On
Nico was definitely one of my breakout players this year. Damani Jackson.
Yeah.
I already mentioned him. Damani Jackson's another one. 3rd is when it gets a little bit tricky, but I do think I'm going to go with another quarterback. Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. I don't think he's going to be as good as Nico, but I think he's going to throw for a lot of yards, and I think he could end up being better than like Jackson Dart. I think Ole Miss is better, but I think he could have a better year than Jackson Dart. And I like the fact that he waited his turn. He didn't jump ship. He was a high-profile quarterback from the 2021 class. Stayed 3 years, didn't transfer. Looked nice when he came in. I mean, they somehow had that miracle comeback against Wisconsin last year. He was throwing some darts to because first of whatever reason, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas were in that. We're playing. And like Braylon Allen from Wisconsin didn't play. Doesn't make much sense. But he was throwing some darts. And so I would go him 3rd. And then honorable mention, LSU corner Jair Brown.
Okay.
And Ja'Kalen Johnson, both from Ohio State. They've taken 3 transfer corners from Ohio State in the past 4 years with 7 banks in the past 3 years. But I don't know. I don't actually think that.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, still give the Buckeye guys some love. But hey, if you guys have listened this far, watched this far, like, subscribe. We appreciate all the support we've been going for. And, this is year 4 of coverage that we've had on college football. This is, it's pretty cool. But with that being said, Brady King, Chase Johnson, we'll see you guys next time with the Big Ten.